Orion. Bird. Oh. Do you love your mommy? 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 Hey guys, and welcome back to Storytime with Wine, where I read books in the public domain, usually classical books, and add my very own swear-tastic humor to them. Swear-tastic commentaries. Humor is, it's subjective. Today we're going to be reading chapter 4 of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. So that's what we're looking at today. To give you a quick recap, Jane is a 10-year-old girl who lives with her abusive aunt and her 3 awful children who she's raising to be just as terrible as her. Even the maids are absolutely awful. Bessie's the kinder of the two, but she's just the least smelly jerk. So let's move into chapter 4. And I do know I'm supposed to be drinking wine with this, so wine. Let me know what you guys think of my new microphone and my new webcam. Yeah, it was actually super cheap, but I think it adds so much more to my videos. And the best part is now I can start making content for my real estate channel, and that's going to be really fun. Okay, so Chapter 4, guys. Chapter 4. From my discourse with Mr. Lloyd, and from the above reported conference between Bessie and Abbott, I gathered enough of hope to suffice as a motive for wishing to get well. A change seemed near. I desired and waited it in silence. It tarried, however. Days and weeks passed. I had regained my normal state of health, but no new allusion was made to the subject over which I brooded. Mrs. Reed surveyed me at times with a severe eye, but seldom addressed me. Good. Since my illness, she had drawn a more marked line of separation than ever between me and her own children. Mental illness isn't contagious, Mrs. Reed. Besides, you're the one who made her all depressed. Appointing me a small closet to sleep in by myself, condemning me to take my meals alone and pass all my time in the nursery while my cousins were constantly in the drawing room. I don't know if they mean a literal closet or if this is like ye olde English, like it's just a bedroom, like a small bedroom or whatever. But if you're sleeping in a closet, like this is some Harry Potter shit. Not a hint, however, did she drop about sending me to school. Still, I felt an instinctive certainty that she would not long endure me under the same roof with her. For her glance, now more than ever, when turned on me, expressed an insuperable and rooted aversion. Eliza and Georgiana, evidently acting according to orders, spoke to me as little as possible. John thrust his tongue in his cheek whenever he saw me, and once attempted chastisement. But as I instantly turned against him, roused by the same sentiment of deep ire and desperate revolt which had stirred my corruption before, he thought it better to desist. That's right, bitch. Run! And ran from me uttering execrations and vowing I had burst his nose. I had indeed leveled at that prominent feature as hard a blow as my knuckles could inflict. My bitch is so done. She's like, you know what? That's it. We fighting from now on. Square up, bitch. I love it. Oh, all right. Anyway, where were we at? She turned it into fucking Rocky. Oh, and when I saw that either that or my look daunted him, I had the greatest inclination to follow up my advantage to purpose, but he was already with his mama. So he as soon as she decides, you know what? I'm going to beat your ass again. He runs to his mom like that. Oh, it's great. The bully has become the bullied. Oh shit, is my girl Jane turning into a villain? I heard him in a blubbering tone commence the tale of how that nasty Jane Eyre had flown at him like a mad cat. He was stopped rather harshly. Don't talk to me about her, John. I told you not to go near her. She is not worthy of notice. I do not choose that either you or your sisters should associate with her. All right. Here, leaning over the banister, I cried out suddenly, and without at all deliberating on my words, "They are not fit to associate with me!" Oh shit. My girl about to die. My girl about to get her ass beat. That's what's about to happen. Oh no. Mrs. Reed was rather a stout woman, but on hearing this strange and audacious declaration, she ran nimbly up the stair, swept me like a whirlwind into the nursery, and crushing me down on the edge of my crib, dared me in an emphatic voice to rise up from that place or utter one syllable during the remainder of the day. I feel like this isn't really like as evil, because like I think that all parents have been pushed to that extent at some point. You know what I mean? Like you're just done. You've told your child, don't do this. I told you not to do this like 300 times now. And then like they just pick them up and go like, I said no. Why don't you listen? That really threatening voice that they get where it's like, if you move from this spot, I'm going to whoop that ass. You know that one? No? Just my parents? All right. Okay, anyway. Where was I at? What would Uncle Reed say to you if he were alive? Was my scarcely voluntary demand. I say scarcely voluntary, for it seemed as if my tongue pronounced words without my will consenting to their utterance. Something spoke out of me over which I had no control. What? Said Mrs. Reed under her breath. Her usually cold, composed gray eye became troubled with a look like fear. She took her hand from my arm and gazed at me as if she really did not know whether I were child or fiend. I was now in for it. My Uncle Reed is in heaven and can see all you do and think, and so can Papa and Mama. They know how you shut me up all day long and how you wish me dead. Mrs. Reed soon rallied her spirits. She shook me most soundly. She boxed both my ears and then left me without a word. Okay, so we're going straight to child abuse from adults now. Like, it was one thing that, John Reed, like, beat the shit out of her. But now Mrs. Reed's, like, batting her around. Can we get Mr. Lloyd back in here? I thought he was supposed to be the social worker. I have a hair on my lip, and I don't like it. It's messing with me. I have cats, so cat hair is just everywhere. All right. So we're done there. Bessie supplied the hiatus by a homily of an hour's length. I have no idea what that sentence is trying to say. It's too ye olde English for me. In which she proved beyond a doubt that I was the most wicked and abandoned child ever reared under a roof. I half believed her, for I felt indeed only bad feelings surging in my breast. November, December, and half of January passed away. Christmas and the New Year had been celebrated at Gateshead with the usual festive cheer. Presents had been interchanged, dinners and evening parties given. From every enjoyment I was, of course, excluded. My share of the gaiety consisted in witnessing the daily appareling of Eliza and Georgiana, and seeing them descend to the drawing room, dressed out in thin muslin frocks and scarlet sashes, with their hair elaborately ringleted, and afterwards in listening to the sound of the piano or the harp played below, to the passing to and fro of the butler and footman, to the jingling of glass and china as refreshments were handed, to the broken hum of conversation as the drawing-room doors opened and closed. When tired of this occupation, I would retire from the stairhead to the solitary and silent nursery. There, somewhat sad, I was not miserable. That's how she's like, that's the best I can hope for. I'm sad, but at least I'm not miserable. At least it's not soul-crushing depression. I'm just sad. This is my new happy. What the fuck? She's 10! To speak truth, I had not the least wish to go into company, for in company I was very rarely noticed. And if Bessie had but been kind and companionable, I would have deemed it a treat to spend the evenings quietly with her, instead of passing them under the formidable eye of Mrs. Reed in a room full of ladies and gentlemen. But Bessie, as soon as she had dressed her young ladies, used to take herself off to the lively regions of the kitchen and housekeeper's room, generally bearing the candle along with her. Just take her candle, too. Aw. I then sat with my doll on my knee till the fire got low. All right, at least there's a fire. Glancing round occasionally to make sure that nothing worse than myself haunted the shadowy room. And when the embers sank to a dull red, I undressed hastily, tugging at knots and strings as I best might, and sought shelter from cold and darkness in my crib. So, like, she undresses herself, and I guess back then, like, you know, somebody would undress you and, like, put you into bed and stuff like that. So she's not used to doing that herself, and now she has to do it herself because nobody loves her. Damn. To this crib, I always took my doll. Human beings must love something, facts. And in the dearth of worthier objects of affection, I contrived to find a pleasure in loving and cherishing a faded graven image, shabby as a miniature scarecrow. It puzzles me now to remember with what absurd sincerity I doted on this little toy, half fancying it alive and capable of sensation. I could not sleep unless it was folded in my nightgown, and when it lay there safe and warm, I was comparatively happy, believing it to be happy likewise. Someone needs to get her a cat. Like, I doubt Mrs. Reed would let her have a cat, and John Reed would probably just kill it because he's a fucking serial killer. John, no one thwarted, much less punished. Though he twisted the necks of the pigeons, this motherfucker's a serial killer!
Are you a serial killer?
Yes.
But somebody needs to get him a cat. Where's my cat? Kitty, 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 kitty. Come here. You want to talk to YouTube? Oh, my Orion bear. Hang on a minute. We interrupt our usual programming to give you the Orion bear. Come here, baby. Come here. You're a good kitty. Yes. I love you. All right, you can go now. I'm sorry. Thank you for putting up with my shit. Okay, we'll finish reading now. You're a good cat. All right. Long did the hours seem while I waited the departure of the company and listened for the sound of Bessie's step on the stairs. Sometimes she would come up in the interval to seek her thimble or her scissors, or perhaps to bring me something by way of supper. Oh, good, they're not starving her. A bun or a cheesecake. You get a whole fucking cheesecake? Probably not. It's probably just like a slice. Still, I would be like, okay with that. It's like everybody's leaving me alone and I get an entire cheesecake to myself. Awesome. Sounds like heaven to me. Then she would sit on the bed while I ate it, and when I had finished, she would tuck the clothes round me, and twice she kissed me and said, "Good night, Miss Jane." Aw, see, like I said, Bessie, the least smelly turd. When thus gentle, Bessie seemed to me the best, prettiest, kindest being in the world, and I wished most intensely that she would always be so pleasant and amiable, and never push me about, or scold, or task me unreasonably, as she was too often wont to do. Bessie Lee must, I think, have been a girl of good natural capacity, for she was smart in all she did, and had a remarkable knack of narrative. So, at least, I judge from the impression made on me by her nursery tales. She was pretty, too, if my recollections of her face and person are correct. I remember her as a slim young woman with black hair, dark eyes, very nice features, and good, clear complexion. But she had a capricious and hasty temper, and indifferent ideas of principle or justice. Still, such as she was, I preferred her to anyone else at Gateshead Hall. It was the 15th of January, about 9 o'clock in the morning. Bessie was gone down to breakfast. My cousins had not yet been summoned to their mamma. Eliza was putting on her bonnet and warm garden coat to go and feed her poultry, an occupation of which she was fond, and not less so of selling the eggs to the housekeeper and hoarding up the money she thus obtained. You two be good to each other. The hell, you sound like you're killing each other. Be chill.
You know that really threatening voice that they get where it's like, if you move from this spot, I'm gonna whoop that ass. You know that one? No?
She had a turn for traffic and a marked propensity for saving. Hey, she's like an entrepreneur. Shown not only in the vending of eggs and chickens. Shown not only in the vending of eggs and children. No. She's selling kids. I was like, she's an entrepreneur. I'm like, oh. Okay. Shown not only in the vending of eggs and chickens, but also in driving hard bargains with the gardener about flower roots, seeds, and slips of plants. That functionary having orders from Mrs. Reed to buy of his young lady all the products of her parterre she wished to sell. Parterre? And Eliza would have sold the hair off her head if she could have made a handsome profit thereby. Damn, she's like one of those snake oil salesmen. As to her money, she first secreted it in odd corners, wrapped in a rag or an old curl paper. But some of these hoards having been discovered by the housemaid, Eliza, fearful of one day losing her valued treasure, consented to entrust it to her mother at a usurious rate of interest, 50 or 60%, which interest she exacted every quarter, keeping her accounts in a little book with anxious accuracy. Whew, man, I have this, like, electric blanket that I'm chilling with. It's summer at my house, guys. Right in the middle of it. Georgiana sat on a high stool, dressing her hair at the glass and interweaving her curls with artificial flowers and faded feathers, of which she had found a store in a drawer in the attic. I was making my bed, having received strict orders from Bessie to get it arranged before she returned, for Bessie now frequently employed me as a sort of under-nursery maid to tidy the room, dust the chairs, etc. Okay, so now she's a servant, an unpaid servant. I feel like there's a word for that. Oh, right, slave. Child slavery, woohoo! Okay, a side note. There's nothing wrong with having your kids do chores in today's day and age. You know, like that's not child slavery or whatever. I get that. The problem is that none of the other kids, no one else in the household in Jane's time is expected to do chores. John Reed doesn't do chores. Mrs. Reed doesn't do chores. Georgiana and Eliza doesn't do chores. Jane's the only one being treated differently, and that's why it's wrong. So just clearing that up for you. Having spread the quilt and folded my nightdress, I went to the window seat to put in order some picture books and doll's house furniture scattered there. An abrupt command from Georgiana to let her playthings alone, for the tiny chairs and mirrors, the fairy plates and cups, were her property, stopped my proceedings. And then, for lack of other occupation, I fell to breathing on the frost flowers with which the window was fretted, and thus clearing a space in the glass through which I might look out on the grounds, where all was still and petrified under the influence of a hard frost. See, that's the problem with single-paned windows.
Renewal by Anderson. We love our new windows.
Nailed it. From this window were visible the porter's lodge and the carriage road, and just as I had dissolved so much of the silver-white foliage veiling the panes as left room to look out, I saw the gates thrown open and a carriage roll through. I watched it ascending the drive with indifference. Carriages often came to Gateshead, but none ever brought visitors in whom I was interested. It stopped in front of the house. The doorbell rang loudly. The newcomer was admitted. All this being nothing to me, my vacant attention soon found livelier attraction in the spectacle of a little hungry robin, which came and chirruped on the twigs of the leafless cherry tree nailed against the wall near the casement. The remains of my breakfast of bread and milk stood on the table, and having crumbled a morsel of roll, I was tugging at the sash to put out the crumbs on the windowsill when Bessie came running upstairs into the nursery. She's kind of like doing like this Disney princess thing with the birds, and I kind of like it. Like, if it's anything like Disney, that bird's going to come back later and like save her from something. Attack the evil stepmother. I don't know. Miss Jane, take off your pinafore. What are you doing there? Have you washed your hands and face this morning? I gave another tug before I answered, for I wanted the bird to be secure of its bread. The sash yielded. I scattered the crumbs, some on the windowsill, some on the cherry tree bough. Then, closing the window, I replied, "No, Bessie, I have only just finished dusting." You know, that chore that you decided that I should do instead of you, even though you're paid for it. Troublesome, careless child! Fuck you. And what are you doing now? You look quite red, as if you had been up to some mischief. What were you opening the window for? Bitch, I have compassion. But I bet she don't tell her because, compassion's not smiled upon in this household. I was spared the trouble of answering, for Bessie seemed in too great a hurry to listen to explanations. She hauled me to the washstand, inflicted a merciless but happily brief scrub on my face and hands with soap, water, and a coarse towel. Disciplined my head with a bristly brush, denuded me of my pinafore, and then hurrying me to the top of the stairs, bid me go down directly, as I was wanted in the breakfast room. I would have asked who wanted me. I would have demanded if Mrs. Reed was there, but Bessie was already gone, and had closed the nursery door upon me. I slowly descended. For nearly 3 months, I had never been called to Mrs. Reed's presence. Restricted so long to the nursery, the breakfast, dining, and drawing rooms were become for me awful regions on which it dismayed me to intrude. I get that. You just want to stay in your room. She's become an angsty teenager at 10 years old. I now stood in the empty hall. Before me was the breakfast room door, and I stopped, intimidated and trembling. What a miserable little poltroon had fear, engendered of unjust and punishment, made of me in those days. That's a really wordy sentence. I feared to return to the nursery and feared to go forward to the parlor. 10 minutes I stood in agitated hesitation. The vehement ringing of the breakfast room bell decided me. I must enter. Who could want me? I asked inwardly, as with both hands I turned the stiff door handle, which, for a second or two, resisted my efforts. What should I see besides Aunt Reed in the apartment? A man or a woman? It's very on the nose in her monologue. The handle turned, the door unclosed, and passing through and curtsying low, I looked up at a black pillar. Such, at least, appeared to me at first sight, the straight, narrow, sable-clad shape standing erect on the rug. The grim face at the top was like a carved mask, placed above the shaft by way of capital. I don't know what that means. It's way too ye olde English. Mrs. Reed occupied her usual seat by the fireside. She made a signal to me to approach. I did so, and she introduced me to the stony stranger with the words, "This is the little girl respecting whom I applied to you." Is it JDC? He, for it was a man, turned his head slowly towards where I stood, and having examined me with the 2 inquisitive-looking gray eyes which twinkled under a pair of bushy brows, said solemnly, "Oh God, what did I swallow? That was my own spit. I can't swallow my own sweat." Ew. I meant spit. Oh. He, for it was a man, turned his head slowly towards where I stood, and having examined me with the 2 inquisitive-looking gray eyes which twinkled under a pair of bushy brows, said solemnly and in a bass voice, "Her size is small. What is her age?" 10 years. "So much?" was the doubtful answer, and he prolonged his scrutiny for some minutes. Presently, he addressed me. "Your name, little girl?" "Jane Eyre, sir." And uttering these words, I looked up. He seemed to me a tall gentleman, but then I was very little. His features were large, and they had all the lines of its frame were equally harsh and prim. "Well, Jane Eyre, and are you a good child?" Impossible to reply to this in the affirmative. My little world held a contrary opinion. I was silent. Mrs. Reed answered for me by an expressive shake of the head, adding soon, "Perhaps the less said on that subject, the better, Mr. Brocklehurst." Brocklehurst. Sorry indeed to hear it. She and I must have some talk. and bending from the perpendicular, he installed his person in the armchair opposite Mrs. Reed's. "Come here," he said. I stepped across the rug. He placed me square and straight before him. What a face he had, now that it was almost on a level with mine. What a great nose, and what a mouth, and what large, prominent teeth. "What big ears you have, Grandma." "No sight so sad as that of a naughty child," he began, "especially a naughty little girl. Do you know where the wicked go after death?" "They go to hell," was my ready and orthodox answer. "And what is hell? Can you tell me that?" "A pit full of fire." "And should you like to fall into that pit and to be burning there forever?" "No, sir." "What must you do to avoid it?" I deliberated a moment. My answer, when it did come, was objectionable. "I must keep in good health and not die." No! Oh, bitch! I love her! I love her now. She is my favorite character forever. "I must keep in good health and not die." Solid answer, Jane. Solid fucking answer. This little girl funny as fuck. Oh God, my sides. Oh, no. I'm boiling alive. I turned off this electric blanket. It didn't help. Oh, shit. Okay, so what's he say now? Here it is. "How can you keep in good health? Children younger than you die daily. I buried a little child of 5 years old only a day or two since. A good little child whose soul is now in heaven. It is to be feared the same could not be said of you were you to be called hence."
It was a joke, Mr. Brocklehurst. Get a sense of humor.
Well, he's kind of a jerk. Not being in a condition to remove his doubt, I only cast my eyes down on the 2 large feet planted on the rug and sighed, wishing myself far enough away. She's like, "Can I just go back to my room?" I hate everybody, like all humans. I just want to go back to my room and not be here anymore. "I hope that sigh is from the heart and that you repent of ever having been the occasion of discomfort to your excellent benefactress." He's not reading her right. He's like, "No, I'm just frustrated that I have to have this discussion with you. I want to go back to my room. Can I go away now?" "Benefactress, benefactress," said I inwardly. Thank God it was inward. "They all call Mrs. Reed my benefactress. If so, a benefactress is a disagreeable thing." "Do you say your prayers night and morning?" continued my interrogator. "Yes, sir." "Do you read your Bible?" "Sometimes." "With pleasure? Are you fond of it?" "I like Revelations and the book of Daniel and Genesis and Samuel and a little bit of Exodus and some parts of Kings and Chronicles and Job and Jonah." Wow, she really does read her Bible. That's a lot of shit. "And the Psalms? I hope you like them." "No, sir." "No? Oh, shocking. I have a little boy younger than you who knows 6 Psalms by heart, and when you ask him which he would rather have, a gingerbread nut to eat or a verse of a psalm to learn, he says, 'Oh, the verse of a psalm. Angels sing psalms,' says he. 'I wish to be a little angel here below.' He then gets 2 nuts in recompense for his infant piety." I feel like this little boy has learned how to work the system. He's like, "No, if I say Psalms, I want the psalm instead of the nut, then they'll give me 2 nuts. So I'm just going to say Psalms. That way I can get 2 nuts." He's a smart little boy. I'll give him that. "Psalms are not interesting," I remarked. She's honest as hell. "That proves you have a wicked heart, and you must pray to God." What? "To change it. To give you a new and clean one, to take away your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh." I'm not evil. I haven't hurt. Oh my God. Why does everyone think this little girl's evil? It's pissing me off. She's not evil. She's a good girl who's been treated horribly by everyone around her. Ah! I was about to propound a question, touching the manner in which that operation of changing my heart was to be performed, when Mrs. Reed interposed, telling me to sit down. She then proceeded to carry on the conversation herself. Mr. Brocklehurst, I believe I intimated in the letter which I wrote to you 3 weeks ago that this little girl has not quite the character and disposition I could wish. Should you admit her into Lowood School? Oh, good. I should be glad if the superintendent and teachers were requested to keep a strict eye on her, and above all, to guard against her worst fault, a tendency to deceit. I mention this in your hearing, Jane, that you may not attempt to impose on Mr. Brocklehurst. Well might I dislike Mrs. Reed, for it was her nature to wound me cruelly. Never was I happy in her presence. However carefully I obeyed, however strenuously I strove to please her, my efforts were still repulsed and repaid by such sentences as the above. Now, uttered before a stranger, the accusation cut me to the heart. I dimly perceived that she was already obliterating hope from the new phase of existence which she destined me to enter. I felt, though I could not have expressed the feeling, that she was sowing aversion and unkindness along my future path. I saw myself transformed under Mr. Brocklehurst's eye into an artful, noxious child. And what could I do to remedy the injury? Nothing indeed, thought I, as I struggled to repress a sob and hastily wiped away some tears, the impotent evidences of my anguish. Dude, she gets a new start. She gets to go to the school where she doesn't have to fuck around with Mrs. Reed and get beat by fucking John Reed and eventually probably murdered. She finally gets this new start that I've been fucking rooting for this entire time, and then Mrs. Reed decides to turn everyone against her before she even gets to the school. Can she die in a house fire? I kind of want Mrs. Reed to die in a house fire. Deceit is indeed a sad fault in a child, said Mr. Brocklehurst. It is akin to falsehood, and all liars will have their portion in the lake burning with fire and brimstone. She shall, however, be watched, Mrs. Reed. I will speak to Miss Temple and the teachers. I should wish her to be brought up in a manner suiting her prospects, continued my benefactress, to be made useful, to be kept humble. As for the vacations, she will, with your permission, spend them always at Lowood. Bitch, I don't want to come back here anyway. Your decisions are perfectly judicious, madam, returned Mr. Brocklehurst. Humility is a Christian grace, and one peculiarly appropriate to the pupils of Lowood. I, therefore, direct that especial care shall be bestowed on its cultivation amongst them. I have studied how best to mortify in them the worldly sentiment of pride, and only the other day I had a pleasing proof of my success. My second daughter, Augusta, went with her mamma to visit the school, and on her return she exclaimed, "Oh, dear papa, how quiet and plain all the girls at Lowood look, with their hair combed behind their ears and their long pinafores and those little Holland pockets inside their frocks. They are almost like poor people's children. And," said she, "they looked at my dress and mamma's as if they had never seen a silk gown before." I don't know why this is a good thing. Why is this a good thing? This is a state of things I quite approve, returned Mrs. Reed. Had I sought all England over, I could scarcely have found a system more exactly fitting a child like Jane Eyre. Consistency, my dear Mr. Brocklehurst. I advocate consistency in all these things. In all things. Consistency, madam, is the first of Christian duties, and it has been observed in every arrangement connected with the establishment of Lowood. Plain fare, simple attire, unsophisticated accommodations, hearty and active habits, such as the order of the day in the house and in its inhabitants. Holy crap, I can't talk. Quite right, sir. I may then depend upon this child being received as a pupil at Lowood, and there being trained in conformity to her position and prospects. Madam, you may. She shall be placed in that nursery of chosen plants, and I trust she will show herself grateful for the inestimable privilege of her election. I will send her then as soon as possible, Mr. Brocklehurst, for I assure you I feel anxious to be relieved of a responsibility that was becoming too irksome. It is JDC. She's sending her to JDC. Or military school. No doubt, madam. And now I wish you good morning. I shall return to Brocklehurst Hall in the course of a week or two. My good friend, the Archdeacon, will not permit me to leave him sooner. I shall send Miss Temple notice that she is to expect a new girl, so that there will be no difficulty about receiving her. Goodbye. Goodbye, Mr. Brocklehurst. Remember me to Mrs. and Miss Brocklehurst, and to Augusta, and Theodore, and Master Broughton, and Master Broughton Brocklehurst. Brocklehurst. Holy fuck, your parents hated you, didn't they? I will, madam. Little girl, here is a book entitled The Child's Guide. Read it with prayer, especially that part containing an account of the awfully sudden death of Martha G., a naughty child addicted to falsehood and deceit. Falsehood and deceit. With these words, Mr. Brocklehurst put into my hand a thin pamphlet sewn in a cover, and having rung for his carriage, he departed. Now, there's more in this chapter, but it's like, 1, 2, 3, it's like 4 pages altogether. So this video is already pretty long, so I'm just going to stop it there. But if you like what I do with Storytime with Wine, and you actually enjoy reading, like hearing Jane Eyre and my commentary about it and everything, let me know. Like, send me a comment, give me a like, a subscribe, something like that. And also, I just uploaded the first chapter, like the first 5 minutes of a book that I'm writing called RemWorld. So if you guys want to check that out, I'll have like a link to the video somewhere. I really love this new camera. And this audio quality is great. All right. Anyway, I'm going to quit now. So I'll catch y'all later. Y'all be safe and peace.